Chris Gasper, your thoughts on the current state of the Boston Red Sox without Rafael Devers?
I just look at it and I think that, for me, I'm going to go big picture, 30,000-foot view, because there was so much talk about culture, and that was one of the big reasons they wanted to move off Rafael Devers. He was this black cloud hanging over the clubhouse. They were worried about how he could influence the behavior of Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony. Christian Campbell's not in the majors anymore, but he was mentioned at the time. I just think that there's nothing more Pollyanna-ish or cliche in sports than droning on and on about culture's role in winning. I'm not going to tell you it's irrelevant, because it's not. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't matter, because it does. But I think in the majority of cases, if you prioritize quote-unquote culture over talent, you're not going to be very good. And I think that's what we're seeing with the Red Sox here. Was Devers a pain in the butt? Yes. Was he being rebellious and obstinate? Absolutely. Should he have played first base? Yeah. Was he selfish? Yes. But on the whole, with his bat and his production in the lineup, was he a net positive towards the team's success? He was. He was. And you have to understand that before you remove him from the situation. So even though he's acting like a spoiled child, the idea that just, we're going to win more games now because, he's not on the team. And, it's what Murray sort of talks about when teams are like trying to win on vibes. Like, that doesn't work for the most part. And I'll use examples throughout.
It only gets you so far. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at those late 70s Yankees. They hated each other. That was one of the most toxic environments in the history of sports. They won because they were loaded. The stuff that came out in this Celtics documentary about Robert Parrish and Larry Bird, did that stop the Celtics from winning? No. The Patriots had arguably the greatest culture in the history of sports. Then Tom Brady left. They had the same culture. Did they win? Not only did they not win, the culture completely imploded and fell apart. So I just think the whole culture piece of this is so overblown and a little bit childish. I mean, this is professional sports. It's not the Boy Scouts. Everybody doesn't have to be best friends and get along. The professional thing is playing and winning alongside people that you don't really like and that you might not agree with.
Give me more. Do you think culture was really the reason they did it?
I think it was part of it. I do think, obviously, the idea of getting out from under the contract if he was just going to be a DH. But I think it was a combination of culture and bruised egos. The idea of the ego of the chief baseball officer and the ego of the owner were bruised by Devers saying, no, I'm not going to do this right now. Maybe I'll do it later. I think that was a significant component of the trade. And it could be emotional too, Mike. Just quickly, it could be emotional because it's like when they're doing that to you and then you're paying him the money, you look at it and automatically say, well, this guy's not worth that money.
And Mike, just quickly, too, just to add to that, what I find ironic about the whole thing, as Gasper said it, is that they want to make all their decisions based on the spreadsheet. But when it came to Devers, it was emotional. You follow me?
Yes.
It's like all of a sudden, as soon as they're the ones who were offended, now it's different.
So this is why I asked it that. Look, I do believe in culture more than you do. I can, you can scold me and argue with me on it, but I don't think it's why the Red Sox, did it. I think it's on their list somewhere down there. It's
money,
the emotion and the bruised ego followed by how much he's costing them. And I think culture is something that they're putting out there to try and sell it because they can't admit that it's the money. The owners never admit it's the money. If Rafi Devers was making $12 million a year and not $32 million a year or whatever it is, they'd put up with the bad culture.
Correct.
And they'd handle the insults. So the money is where it starts. I do think think he was setting a bad example, and somewhere down the list, they didn't like the thought of Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer watching him carry himself the way he was carrying himself every day. I think that was on their list. But they would have put up with it if he cost less. And I just think it's something that they're selling. I don't even think, in other words, Chris, I don't think they believe it even as much as they're promoting it. They're doing it because they don't want to admit that it was the money.
I do think Breslow believes it because he was on that 2013 Red Sox team, which is one of those outlier teams where culture really did matter and enhance the team. There's no question about it. I mean, it does happen. I'm not saying it never happens in sports, but I just think that when you look at it overall, it is by far the exception and not the rule. And I think it's very chicken and the egg. Do you start winning because of your culture, or do you start having a culture because you're winning? So when I look at it from that standpoint, that's how I feel. And here's what my response would be to what you're saying about the money. I think it's a legitimate point. However, the timing of the trade, to me, speaks more to what Mazz is saying about making an emotional decision. And I agree with that. I think that's a great point. Sort of the hypocrisy of everything's data-driven until you get your backup. Because the reality is, if you wanted to dump that contract, you could have dumped it at the trade deadline. You could have dumped it in the offseason.
I don't know about that. And I think San Francisco played him. I think that San Francisco owner played this game where he said, listen, we're not going down to the deadline on this. We do this now or we're not doing it, and that's why they did it. And I think Henry thought he wouldn't be able to unload the full contract. And that was a key piece to them. I mean, the Giants owner said point blank, if I didn't pick up the whole contract, this wouldn't have happened.
No, I have no doubt about that. That if the Giants didn't pick up the money, Chris, this part I do believe. If they didn't pick up the money, he wasn't getting traded.
Well, traded at that point or trade?
Yeah, right. At that point.
Traded at that point to that team.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
At that point.
Well, I understand what you guys are saying. I would just say if that's the case and that's why they did the deal, that really speaks to why they're at where they're at, because they let somebody bluff and bully them into that situation. You mean to tell me San Francisco wouldn't have had the same need at the trade deadline? I mean, they were obviously interested in the player. The owner was talking to Sam Kennedy about Rafael Devers to show them that they were serious. And then there's this reporting that the Red Sox had other teams interested. I mean, that's where you kind of have to bluff, don't you? No. You can't get like panic walked into a corner to make a deal.
They got beat up by this Greg Johnson guy in San Francisco. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think they care what they got back.
But the whole culture thing.
They were interested in dumping the contract.
Chris had a good line in his email. Even with him acting like a spoiled child, his net contribution to the Red Sox via his bat, meaning Devers, was an overall plus for the team. But I hope Craig Breslow, Felger, and the rest of the culture club are happy now watching this team's offensive ineptitude without the team's most feared hitter. Culture club.
I'll bumble for you.
Yeah. Well, I got one already, Jimmy. Did you roll it in already? Like I'm one step ahead of you, Murray. Breslow, Felger, and the culture club. Play out. It still has to play. It's a good week for you, and you're a little stronger in your commentary now that they've had a bad week. But this is what this is about.
You will lose.
You shake your ass at me. I shake my ass at you. We'll see. I don't like my chances. I think you'll be doing more ass shaking than I will. Chris, your thoughts on that Craig Breslow article in the Globe yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an interesting article for a couple of reasons. And my main takeaway is I think Breslow is a very bright guy, and he might really, in the end, have all the answers here. But part of being a leader is not just ordering people to do things. It's inspiring people to want to do those things. And I think that's the disconnect here. I think he lacks that ability. And as I said in the email, as the kids these days say, Felger, Mazz, you guys have kids this age that use this term, Brez has no riz. He just doesn't have the riz to get people to buy into this and believe in it. And Theo had a tremendous amount of charisma. Dombrowski was a guy that also carried himself a certain way and had charisma. Chaim Bloom, in certain situations, had this very endearing, self-deprecating manner. You don't see any of that from Breslow. And that's not just us in the media who aren't seeing that. It feels like maybe people in that organization aren't seeing that either, based from all the reporting that's come out. And I think that's an issue for him. You can have all the answers and you can know exactly what should be done. But if you can't convince the people who work for you that they should believe in this as much as you do, or that they should believe in you, then you have a problem. And I think that's where they are now. And then you have what they would say is a lack of alignment.
So Mazz brought up this detail about well, hold on. Now, first, you had this thing about the Newt Rockne speech.
Oh, you want me to get to that?
Yeah.
Yes. Wow, you actually really read this email.
I read your email.
Okay. I appreciate it. I do. No, I thought, so this was alarming to me in Alex's story. Breslow is saying that after they went through the whole sportsology thing and they made the cuts, that was the firm they brought in, the consulting firm, to evaluate efficiency in the organization. Breslow said to Alex Spear that he did what he described as my best Newt Rockne speech. He tried to offer reassurance last fall. So we held a Zoom with all the baseball operations people saying the restructuring was done everybody who remains should feel secure in their position. So this is last fall he did this. To me, it's really alarming that happened last fall. He gave that rah-rah speech, and yet there's still all this stuff months later, 9 months later, like still leaking out about what's going on in the organization and baseball ops that people don't like. So it's obvious that speech was, much like what this team does best, swing and a miss. And that is concerning to me that he did this last fall, according to him, told everybody, tried to rally everybody with the rah-rah speech. And here we are in late June, and you still have stuff leaking out about the way baseball ops is run and how impersonal his regime is. That's not great.
Absolutely. It's obvious. Like the detail Mazz I was just going to bring up, read about the team building exercise, cleaning up the office.
Yeah, the trash in the office.
Which again, hashtag I stand with Craig on this one. But it didn't land not only did it not land.
And they also had the Netflix cameras in their faces while it was going on.
Okay, well, the whole thing. We're going to go out and clean, like community beach cleaning. We're going to all do that in the office, pick up the office, get together and do that. And the Netflix people are following us. So not only did it not land, even after this thing you're talking about, where they do the purge and those have survived, they've survived in the Newt Rodney speech, people are still bitching about it. They're still bitching about it to Globe reporters.
Well, they kind of got exposed on camera to Netflix as a bunch of like bums that no one wants to be exposed as like a bum.
He doesn't connect with people. This is the problem. Instead of like giving
So did that scene make the doc?
I don't know. I haven't watched it.
I guess it did. Apparently it did. So, and, but to me, this is the problem. The right way to get people's trust is to sit in a room and say, ask me whatever you want. I'll answer it the best I can. I recognize, I know how you guys feel. Relate to them. Connect to them. He doesn't know how. So, Chris, again, these guys we were asking earlier, I said, what is Craig Breslow's job? If you said, what is his primary responsibility? If I asked you that, what would you say?
Primary responsibility, to be the leader of baseball operations.
So that's what I say.
Forward-facing person for baseball.
So I agree with you. Now, again,
I said pick players.
I know it's a loaded question. I admit it's a loaded question because you could say, well, the biggest thing is talent evaluation.
I mean, ultimately, isn't that what you want him to? That's what you want.
Yes.
But what about culture, Felger? Doesn't he have to set the culture?
But
if the players have to set the culture, doesn't he have to set the culture for the organization?
Yeah.
Right?
No, he does.
He's got to get buy-in. And when I say buy, some of that is to make the right decisions. I'm not minimizing that part of it. And admittedly, I set you guys up. But at the end of the day, they have to believe in him. They've got to believe in him. If they don't believe in Breslow, forget it. They got no shot. And I don't think they believe in him, Chris. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think it's hard for him because he has such great conviction in what he's doing. And that everything's going in the right direction. And he could be right, by the way. He could be right. But if you can't get everybody, as you said, I like the word you used, as buy-in. If you can't get everybody paddling in the same direction, then it doesn't really matter if you have the answers. It's just one of those things where if people aren't believing in what you're doing or buying into what you're doing, then you're not ultimately going to be able to accomplish it. And every once in a while, even though you are exceedingly intelligent, you have to stop and explain to people why you're right. You actually do have to justify why you're asking them to do something. And it seems like in his haste to just try and turn this thing around as quickly as he can, which obviously has not happened yet, he sort of skipped that part. He sort of skipped the part where he explains why they have to do what he wants them to do. It's sort of like, just do it. And I think that's kind of what happened with Devers, by the way.
Yeah, it's part of it because he's just another clone,
exactly.
drone, computer program, mainframe. He's just another one of these guys.
I mean, you've talked about this, but you know why these nerds have to do these stupid team building things? Yeah, let's go.
Because they don't know how to talk to people in the hallway.
Bingo, because they can't do it on their own. They have to come up with some stupid concept like let's go play croquet on the front lawn or freaking cornhole. Let's go bowling.
Let's attempt to make friends.
Yeah, you know what? Let's clean up the trash in the office. How about that? That sounds like fun. Wow, how old are your kids?
You don't make friends with forced family fun at work.
Oh, God.
Don't ask people to do stuff extra or go to meetings.
You want to build camaraderie? Go have a couple of beers with them.
I think people, that's not what I talk about when I talk about culture. I don't care if people get along. That's not what that means. Culture to me in sports, Chris, is tough selfless, hardworking guys that know how to win and put that over individual stuff. That's culture. They don't have to get along, but you have to have I think it's important to have a team of those guys. Devers wasn't that kind of guy. He was just really talented. And you've got to have some of those too. Like I totally acknowledge that. But that's what I mean by culture. They don't have to get along and the Boy George and all this stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. In cornhole. Tough guys.
Yeah, values.
Tough, hardworking guys that care about winning. And obviously have talent to go along with it.
I would just say that the person who embodied that, probably the most for the Patriots was Mike Vrabel, and he's the coach of the team now. And even he said, you can't win with just a bunch of good dudes.
It's true.
And that's the reality. Like, you're going to have some guys that are pains in the ass. I mean, the Red Sox had it when they were winning World Series. I mean, Manny Ramirez, was he tough? Do anything to win, sacrifice type of player?
He was surrounded.
Was he more about himself?
But he was surrounded by enough guys that were.
Yeah.
That had that winning quotient and all that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I tell you, Pedro was a pain in the ass. But when it came time to play, he competed and he had the right values. So he was, I would say
Schilling's like one of the top 5
Absolutely.
worst people you could think about.
Absolutely.
And, tremendous competitor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it takes all that.